Howdy, let's do this. My name's Justin, and I am the UX designer of Team Whiteboar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ian. I was the developer coder of the game.
I'm Orion, and I'm user research.
And I'm Sol. I did the artwork. Our team's community partners were Mark Bardsley and Tony Bernard from Avanade. They helped us figure out and understand our design process, exposed us to new technologies, and understand our design process. Introduced us to interesting people and offered guidance during our pivots. Before getting into our current projects, we want to talk about where we began, which was a very different place from where we are now. We initially wanted to design an interactive experience that explores the space between art and technology, like those seen in places like Team Lab or Meow Wolf. With that concept in mind, we envisioned Music of the Spheres, an interactive solar system exhibit that would take up a whole room. The revolving planets had speakers inside, and patrons of the exhibit would meander around with an RFID wand. As they walked closer to a planet, it would play musical notes, creating patterns and chords as the planets orbited. The plan was to build a physical exhibit, but as events of the pandemic unfolded, we couldn't ensure a safe space to house the exhibit, so we decided to pivot to another kind of interactive experience, games.
I'm going to play a brief animation that Sol made that was the idea of what we wanted this to look like in a digital form. So what you're seeing here is the user hovering over the planet or sphere, and a visual representation of the audio played back would happen, and it kind of created this really interactive, organic experience for users. We found that what was actually more interesting was trying to embed some nostalgia from these early 2000s games into this idea. We started to break it down and started to explore the elements that were actually really fun to use in games. If you've ever played these early 2000s Flash games, you might recognize some of these images. One of the biggest ones here, the logo from a Miniclip, is actually still active today, but a lot of these games really don't have any players anymore. So what we decided to do was, in that fashion, quick 5-minute games that were really easy, was create multiple games, 4 games in fact, and we called this little venture Toy Box. And what we wanted to do with it was make 4 fun individual games that you could pick up and play without having to involve yourself with heavy instructions or complicated mechanics or anything like that. These are really simple games like Flow or Geometry Wars or the Leaf Blower Revolution.
So yeah, while trying to figure out what we wanted to make for a toy box, we underwent a lot of testing with various games on the internet. However, there was a big emphasis, like Ian said, with Flash games, since we wanted ours to be pretty simple in nature. When trying to find good sources for inspiration, we made sure to have others play the games and see if they found them interesting as well, which is what led us to some pretty important questions in generating concepts for our games. Number 1, is it fun? Number 2, what is the goal / objective, or is there one at all? Number 3, what are the main mechanics? And number 4, is there a tool, a toy, or instrument? These questions were used in our user testing as ways to narrow down which of our competitors we should borrow and generate ideas from. Our audience for Toy Box revolved around people with a little bit of time that wanted something fun to do, which mainly came from your testing, since we all tested with different individuals. For instance, a couple of us had some casual gamers that enjoyed games that we play, and some of us tested with hardcore grind the rank players that like some as well, and also say that they usually play games while they're waiting in long queues, which was perfect for us, which we just needed to design something that people would play for a short amount of time here and there. However, eventually we thought it would be better just to focus on one game. Not only would it be a little bit more doable with the time frame that we had, it would allow us to go way more in depth as well.
And with that, we invite y'all to the world premiere of our game, Graduator.
yourself. Nail the interview.
Yeah, hi. It's summer's most anticipated game, Graduator.
So, Graduator is what we're calling a roguelike job fair simulator. It's a bullet hell game inspired by really popular titles like Binding of Isaac, Hades, and Enter the Gungeon. The objective is you play as the graduate, a recent college graduate tasked with marketing themselves at a job fair by throwing interviews or throwing resumes at people. Once you've kind of cleared your way through the fair and you've thrown resumes at everybody, then you're able to advance into the interview, which is the boss fight of our game. One thing that we realized when we were making Graduator is that our user kind of changed a little bit. And instead of just making games for gamers, we found ourselves really making a game for us, for people in our, lived experience, for the cohort, because, we had been, putting ourselves into that like meat grinder of just throwing a glute of resumes into the void, and hoping for the best, right? So we kind of wanted to honor that a little bit. And we think that we've made something really special. And now Ian is going to run you through the demo of our game as it works right now.
Yeah, so I've played this 1,010 times, so I, kind of know everything about it. So I did a very quick playthrough of the entire game. So essentially, what you'll see in a second, this should look familiar, as it was in the trailer. But what you'll see is a huge map, and the map is like 4 monitors large, and the reason for that was because a lot of our testing, we found that it's really easy to make one big map that people can explore, and it's a lot easier to get used to. So rather than going through a bunch of different levels that you're really not familiar with, you can kind of get better at the game when you know kind of what to expect. But things are still a little random, so it's not that easy. I did try to make this, challenging, just because I knew I was going to play it 1,000 times too.
There was a lot of usability testing involved during the various Graduator prototypes and iterations as well, because we would find things like when stuff is moving so quickly on the screen, you wouldn't be able to see what was going on. So we kept having to make new assets to really highlight the resumes and the business cards.
The dialogue boxes you see are supposed to be kind of the job reps floating around asking to see your resume, getting links to your portfolio, just small talk type things that you would hear in a career fair. Because I think we've all been to at least one, and this is just some of the stuff that you might hear. And you enter the headhunter or recruiter's office, and everything now has been downsized for the player. And now the recruiter is a huge avatar, and you get tossed a bunch of business cards just flying at you constantly, because he's got a whole bunch of people in his Rolodex or whatever that he's going to try to network with you, and so he's really interested in getting you hired, but he's got 1,000 people you need to contact. Like I said, I've played this 1,000 times, so I just kind of took a little secret here and eliminated him, and that is the entire playthrough.
So that is our game, Graduator, as it stands right now. You can check it out on the web. You can download it. I think you can download it. It works most of the time. Thank y'all for attending our little PAX booth here. And we are now open for questions. So let's do it.
Awesome. Let's see. Rachel you talked about how you began designing for your lived experience as a cohort as you went through the design process. Based on your experience in building this project, do you see games as having the capacity to bridge lived experiences?
Sure. I think that you can make the argument for games driving empathy in a way for certain experiences, because It allows you to immerse yourself in a role that you might not be familiar with. How would we keep up replayability, consistent updates with new content? Yeah, we probably haven't really gone that far into the replayability yet. Right now, the replayability consideration has just been randomizing enemy layouts. Since we only have one map, that's kind of where we're at with that.
All right. What was the most difficult part of working on this project?
Ian, you want to take that one?
Oh, if you're talking, I can't hear you. There you go.
That was a different mute button. Sorry. I don't trust Zoom.
Yeah.
The most difficult part, I'd say, is probably the making sure that we were on task with everything, given the time scale that we had to work with, because this game was put together in about 8 weeks, and learning a new engine and building a game at the same time are kind of two separate challenges, but two sides of the same coin that you just have to overcome them. And it took a lot of focus. And I think just making sure that everything that we could possibly think of to include or explore was being included and explored. And making sure we weren't leaving things out, because there was a lot of stuff that, as you do more of the same, building on top of a concept, you realize there's so much more to actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. Josephine, are you here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, sure. Like a little lighthearted one from David is asking if you had how many do you have any recruiters test your system? And after that, I can go into one of the other ones, like the more serious ones.
No recruiters.
It's a good idea, though. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I'd like to see it
next time.
I'd like to see the reaction.
If you guys get an interview, you should definitely be like, can you play my game really quick? I think that'd be funny.
Well,
So Oh, sorry. You can go.
I think Mark in the chat asked, was there a sense of catharsis or anything like that in gamifying what can be a challenging process of finding a job? Yes, that 100%. We even kind of would often joke amongst ourselves, like after we would send out resumes all afternoon, it's like, all right, I need to just have a drink and play Graduator for 20 minutes just to cool off and get into the thing. It really did, I feel, had an impact.
I realized I forgot to. Sorry, I forgot to answer part of the previous question. G-Develop was the name of the engine. G-Develop.
They also asked for program and language.
It's a visual scripting, so it is basically like moving blocks of code around, and they allow you to get more complicated, but that is what drove that engine, is visual scripting.
Okay.
So the question would be, was it more visual design, playability and fun, or technical?
Ryan, Soul, do you guys want to take one of those?
I'd say it was more technical, because we have to make sure that the engine would actually work for what we wanted to do. And then we just kind of if it worked, we made something visual for it, you know? So it's definitely more technical.
All right, and for our last question, Jason, hi. Are there plans to continue building the game?
As a matter of fact, yes. We have been talking about founding a startup based on Whiteboar Design Studios to further develop Graduator, build some press, and we have a few other titles and their IPs that we've worked on, like in previous projects, in previous pivots, that we kind of want to build out as well. So look for that.
Cool. And this might be a quick question, so we might be able to squeeze it in. Have you tested the game on a mobile device with a small screen?
Not yet. I didn't. Ian, did you?
I did, and there are some things I don't understand about mobile devices that make it look real wonky. So it works, but it doesn't look very good. So there's some things that I need to figure out first about getting how do you go from web to mobile and make it look the same.
Awesome.